Here we have 88 countries participating in the first conference. We have over 100 virtual delegates who are now watching in the live stream. So this is something we learned from the pandemic, that we can be more inclusive and reach a wider audience if we stream and get people from remote locations into our community. At the moment, there are 907 delegates in person at this event. So this is really amazing. I think when we started to plan for this event in January and make the decision, okay, let's go.
Welcome to 239 episode of Cyber Podcast. This is a surprise for our Polish listeners that we just started in not in Polish but in English, and the reason will be clear in a minute. For our English spoken listeners, you are hearing Polish podcast episode Cyber, the podcast with the longest history in Poland, more than 200 episodes, and this episode will be in English because there is a special reason. We just came back from Dublin, and Dublin this year hosted 34th edition of First Conference. First is absolutely the largest CIRCL community around the world, about 500 teams from all continents. This time they came to Dublin, more than 900 delegates from the teams, and those who are interested in joining First community also, not only First member. That was a great opportunity to have many discussions, especially to listen to many interesting presentations. In Dublin, one of the most active team was Luxembourgish team CIRCL, Computer Incident Response Center Luxembourg, the team very well known in the world, and probably most of you know this team. Even if you are not familiar with the name, you are probably familiar with MISP solution. In the team, they produce many more tools, and this is the main topic of my discussion, my interview with Alexandre Dulaunoy, representative of CIRCL, a person who probably knows the most about what tooling are produced in the team, and what is very important, this tooling are also proposed for the community. So let's hear what Alexandre could tell us and explain us about this new tooling, and that I'm pretty sure that will be very interesting for you. Alexandre, could you introduce yourself? A few words about your role, especially in your team, but also maybe also a few words and sentences about your specialization. I mean, your team specialization in the community, because you're doing so many things and so valuable for all of us.
Sure. So I'm basically the head of department for CIRCL. So what we are doing is obviously incident response, and I think it's core for a lot of CIRCL. But over the time, we are developing tools for ourselves, but tools for others. So one of our most well-known tools is MISP. But beside that, we started to release as much as we can of tooling and software. And for the past year, we I would say give, I think, some insight for others to start their open source tooling strategies too.
Yes, I would risk the bet that if we make the survey, what CIRCL is doing, is it incident response or producing new tools? Most people will vote for the second option. So this is a good opportunity maybe to give an update to the community, also our listeners, about because everybody, I think, knows knows MISP, but MISP is still in development and there's some improvements. So maybe we could make and add that what I'm asking you for some update about the MISP, but also new tools, and which also partially you presented here in Dublin during the first conference.
Yeah, indeed, it's a good opportunity. So MISP is an old tool, I would say, nowadays. It's past 10 years that we are working on it. So we have plenty of new features popping up, and we did a one-day workshop at first where we presented the latest feature of MISP, what people can do, and how the analysts can use it to modelize information. So on the MISP site, we have a next release that will include a workflow, which is completely new, helping users to create workflow of the MISP services, so when they publish event, add or edit an event, and things like that. So it's really one thing that we are working on. But besides that, we presented a set of new tools during the conference. The first one that we presented was Lukilu. So one of my colleagues, Raphael and Quinn Norton, which is contributors to and creators of the tools. Basically, this tool is really a forensic tool, but for website. And it's quite uncommon, I would say, because usually you have a lot of forensic tools for disk, network acquisition, things like that. But this one is really focusing on analyzing websites. It's giving you a very nice overview of all the activities when a browser is basically browsing a website, including JavaScript executions, cookies, and stuff like that. And you can be very surprised that a simple access to a simple website is containing number of redirects and so on. It's really useful for detecting phishing, finding similar campaigns on website and so on. So this tool is new. It's again open source. Everyone can install it, and we even run public services. So if you go on lookilu.circle.lu, you might even test any website that you like and see how they behave. And that's interesting because it's nowadays we have seen a lot of people that are afraid to basically run one of the links that they receive, which is I think quite obvious and I think security conscious. But on the other end, you can run it directly with Lukilu and on the web interface. So that's one of the tools. Another one that we presented, and this one is a tool that we developed for the past more than 2 years now under an European project called Melicertes, which is a tool for more, I would say, supporting directories, sharing groups, and orchestrations for communities. With the advent of MISP, we have more and more people having like a lot of MISP instances. They are building their communities, but it starts to be difficult to manage all the organizations, especially the sharing groups and stuff like that. So we decided to develop a software for that to support one network, which is a CIRCL network, so which is an equivalent to the first network at, I would say, a smaller scale, but under the NIS directive. But the tool is open source, and any other organization can use it. And during first, what was quite interesting is when we did the presentation with so many countries that were like, oh, indeed, we have an issue of handling directories, sharing communities, and things like that. So they were very, very interested to looking at the tools, test it, and see if it's fitting their needs.
So it could support initiatives, operations at national level even, right?
Exactly.
That's
so
interesting.
It's a very good point indeed. It's supporting, for example, critical infrastructures when you need to reach out to a specific group of organization and so on.
Am I guessing right if I say that tool could be also a quite nice idea to use in the sectorial environment, like for potential sectorial CIRCLs?
Exactly. So when you have a CIRCL, like for example, in the financial sectors, industry sectors, chemical, you name it, you can really use Cerebrate as a kind of central point, and it's even distributed. So Cerebrate is exactly work like MISP. So you can synchronize nodes, you can have directory synchronizations and so on, and it's already integrated into MISP. So that means if you have like multiple instances, you can support, for example, the gathering of organizations, handling of those organizations, the sharing groups, so to have like centrally manage those kind of distributions, and it's ease the pain, I would say, of some sectorial CIRCL or ISAC that need to manage this kind of group. So that's Cerebrate. It's another project that we are running. And I would say more the recent one, or I would say baby one, it's one that we started some months ago called HashLookup. This one is a completely new one, and it's again completely open source. We have even an online version of it called hashlookup.circle.lu, so easy to remember. And this one is used for finding out if a hash is part of a well-known distributions system. So it could be, for example, a hash if it's part of a Linux distributions, is it part of a Windows distribution, and so on. So For the one that are doing digital forensic, it's a bit like the NSRL database, it's already included, but we try to extend the scope to have as maximum public sources of software release, including, for example, JavaScript framework, things like that, GitHub release, Windows, various distributions. And really the goal at some point is really part of this, what they call SBOM, so software bill of materials, where organizations can verify if those files are obviously part of the official release or not. So again, it's a new project, so it's currently in I would say beta phases. We have already the services. It's online. We start to have developed some tools for doing lookup, and in addition to that, we are extending it to provide privacy-aware data structures like Bloom filters to be able to do offline lookups. So that means like that digital forensic investigator doesn't need to use the public services. They can download the database and fast lookup database to find out if files are part of well-known distribution. So it's really a component tools for digital forensic investigator or any other, I would say, analyst that want to figure out if this hash is part of well-known distributions.
Okay, nice. Actually, I'm always wondering, I think many teams, many people are wondering how you organize your work within your team to be successful with producing so many tools. Is it like a side work, or it is like you have this ambition to produce as many tooling for things you do yourself, that's then at the end of the day you can provide almost every year something new to the community?
It's a very good question, but I think we have a mindset which is, I think, coming from the open source world. And every time that we design something, we always think, okay, it's not only us, it's others too. And if we can make it beneficial for the community, we make it open source. So technically, I know a lot of other CSIR that are producing tools, but they always think, should we open source it or not? And I mean, if I were one advice to give to any CSIR, that at first, if you have a tool somewhere and so on, don't be shy. Release it, it might be useful for the community. And I mean, a lot of the project that we started was, the code was not really nice or a bit crappy or not well documented. But at the end, if it's interesting for others start to be interested, they might do documentation for you, they might contribute back, and you start to have users. So the thing is, I think the strategy is very simple. If you develop tools, the first thing, instead of thinking, oh, it's my internal tool, think it to make it open source, and then it could be beneficial for all the community.
Yeah, so be brave in sharing. Maybe this is the idea for the next year conference speech for you.
That's indeed a good point. I mean, if we can do that, and I mean, we are not so many teams producing open source tools, but looking at the potential of first, how many members we have, it would be for the first community if we have like every single team producing a tool that could be useful for the community. You cannot imagine the total of I would say, resources that could be available to the large community.
Okay, so thank you for producing, for sharing, and all this good work for the community, and wish you all the best, and waiting for the new ones, right?
Great, thank you very much. It was good to talk to you.
Thanks.